go. Everything's moving so slow. The time's moving too fast. I hope this feeling don't last. Well, I've been away from myself too long. My body is aching from all my wrongs. And now that I know I'm not that strong, I'll keep slipping on to you. I'll keep slipping until my time is through. I'll keep slipping on to you, yeah, on to you.
the devil. I am the Lord Satan from the netherworld, ruler of the damned and eternal king of hell. Even I, the master of deceit, can only stomach so much bullshit from the mainstream media and indie grifters. That's why I tune in to Morning Extra with Uncle Warren, because he eliminates my competition, and also because I know I'm gonna see that motherfucker soon.
Deo, Deo.
Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake it all go down. Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake it all go down. Corrosion to her thighs, erosion of her pride. Baby's got a shooter, baby's got corrosion now, baby's got it.
Baby's got it. Baby's got it. Good morning. It's Monday. No, it's Tuesday. Wow. This weekend. No bueno. Turns out this guy, wait a minute, where is he? Yeah, this guy, the sun, hates this stuff. He hates this fucking shit. You know why? Because we crapped out. What was it? The show crapped out, what, about like 30, 40 minutes in? The internet went down here in Chicago. And at the same time, there was a coronal mass ejection going on. We'll get more to that later in the show, but the sun, no fan of conversations about shaving your junk, apparently. So might have to Chuck, you need to talk to your people out there. The sun's drunk. She needs to get home. Who do we got here today? We got lurkers over on Rockfin and Rumble. I don't think anybody's here on Facebook yet. Sometimes they pop in. I think the people on Facebook treat this show like, hey, what's this? You know, like they were trying to look for the bathroom, but they, went down the wrong hallway and they found the show instead. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show Intergalactic, another dimension. In the house, well, out in his house of space. Willie Bragg, what are you doing, Willie? I hope you're doing well. It's 49 degrees here, and it was all like foggy and crappy poo outside, so good day to be indoors. Miguel, the Miguel Quantum Computer 5000. I haven't called you that in a while. Because I'm afraid of quantum computers, that they're going to be the tool of the elite to bring down the world. Who you got? Max Sarjay in the house. What's up, Max? Day 6 of a 7-day fast. No food, no water. Well, you better get water. You after 3 days, you R.I.P. Max Sarjay if no water. This is the hardest fast I've done. Guess I'm getting old. Well, I get, if you know what you're doing, fuck me, but I'm just saying, man, the food, yeah, but the water, I don't know about that. Yeah, have a little sippy poo at least. You get the bare minimum. Oswami 5 over on, you're on, Rockfin this morning. Crunch. Good to see you. Bella. Hello, Bella. Bella went to a fat show Friday night. Was it Friday night, Bella? You saw John Anderson and his band, or whoever he was playing with. I'm always so jealous because I'm a big Yes fan, and every time Bella shows up, I just get hateful, No, I love Bella. Bella's one of my boys. He's one of my BOYEEEZ. So. Super Fat. Really? The name of the band, Super Fat? That's awesome. Always outside the box, that John Anderson guy and his oh, he's going to be touring again soon? That's cool. That's cool. Excellent. The Band Geeks. Yeah, I love some John Anderson. Not the country guy who did Just a Swingin'. I mean, he's all right, but he's not, he's not that John Anderson. I think John Anderson worked for the government too. It's kind of a, oh, I guess in where he's from, it's probably not a common name, but here it's just like, Mr. Anderson. Remember from The Matrix? I would drink water during a fasting myself. It will keep you alive. With that, number one, trying to make a statement. While trying to make a statement. Yeah. Necesito agua. Mucho. Oh, okay, good. You're drinking water, not eating any food. Yeah, okay. All right, good. Because you said 6 to 7 day with no food or water, and I was like, whoa. Hold on, buddy. Wait a minute. All right. Well, yeah. So, the secret show crapped out. But what I did was, since we didn't run any of the videos and stuff that I was going to play that night, we're just going to make the next secret show, part A, the second part of the show. We're going to finish it off because fist in the sky to the sun for taking out the show like that. That's what I think it was. The internet just went tits up for about 30-40 minutes, I think. And then finally, I think sometime after midnight here, it came back on. Like it was on, but it was at certain points, it was just like really slow. But then like sometime after midnight, I think that's when it finally, started working right. And at that point I was like, we'll finish it up next week. So maybe we'll have a longer show next week to make up for it. Maybe there'll be like a fun little extra show this week. Maybe not secret show, but something else too. I've got a little something cooking up here in the old noggin, trying to see if it's going to pan out or not, but I'll let you know. Anyway, we got some news. I don't think I have a hell of a lot of news, relatively speaking to this show, but I say that and then it ends up being 3 hours. So we might as well just jump into it. The man who has basically been a cancer on this planet for his entire political life, ironically, has cancer himself. As Biden's prostate cancer, what happened? How serious is Gleason's score 9? That has something to do with how bad his cancer is. Former U.S. President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. Biden, who's 82 years old, was diagnosed on Friday after doctors discovered a nodule on his prostate, his office said in a statement released on Sunday. The statement added that the cancer had a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5, on a scale that goes up to 10, signifying that Biden's cancer is highly aggressive. Here's what you need to know about the diagnosis. Prostate cancer is confirmed through a biopsy procedure in which tissue is collected to check for signs of disease. The Gleason score, also known as the Gleason Index, is a grading system that assesses how aggressive prostate cancer is by examining the appearance of cancer cells under a microscope. A pathologist examines prostate tissues and assigns 2 Gleason grades, one for the most common pattern of cancer cells and one for the second most common pattern. Each grade falls between 1 and 5, where 1 indicates tissue that closely resembles normal cells, and 5 represents the most abnormal appearance. These 2 grades are added together to get the Gleason score, which ranges from 2 to 10. A 9 or 10 score is seen as a very aggressive form of cancer. And in case you didn't know what prostate cancer was, it ranks as the most frequently identified cancer in American men, according to the National Cancer Institute in the U.S. Globally, it's the second most common form of cancer among men and 4th most common overall, according to the World Cancer Research Fund. This type of cancer affects the prostate, small gland located near the male bladder that contributes to the production of semen. There you go. And if you don't know what the hell that is, well, You're on the wrong show. Although the exact causes remain unclear, some evidence suggests that a diet high in fat could be a contributing factor, or all those fucking chemicals in our foods. That probably has something to do with it too. So far in 2025, more than 313,000 new cases of prostate cancer have been diagnosed in the U.S., the NCI said on its website. That's nearly 3 times higher than the second most common type of cancer among American men, lung cancer, at 110,000 new cases. The U.S. has the highest number of recorded cases of prostate cancer in the world. I'm not surprised. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 13 out of 100 American men will get the disease, citing age as the most common risk factor. Symptoms include urinating, often difficulty urinating, a burning sensation while urinating, and blood in the semen or urine, the CDC says. So how will Biden be treated after you got all that gross urinating imagery out of your head, hopefully? According to the statement from Biden's office, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. Me smells bullshit. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians, it added. A hormone-sensitive prostate cancer needs androgens, a group of male sex hormones, to grow, most of which are made in the testicles. So you didn't think about you were going to be talking about like meat and taters on the morning show, but here we are. The American Cancer Society notes this specific type of prostate cancer can be treated using androgen deprivation therapy, which reduces the level of androgens to stop them from fueling prostate cancer cell growth. Johns Hopkins Medicine said on average the 5-year survival rate for prostate cancer is nearly 100% after diagnosis, but drops to 28% if the cancer has metastasized, as it has done in Biden's case since he's so far into it. And we're going to have more about how long he had it later in the show with our friend of the show, although he doesn't know it, James Lee. We got a video from him about Biden. It also notes that the 10-year and 15-year survival rates are 98% and 95% respectively. Outcomes have improved in recent decades, and patients can expect to live with metastatic prostate cancer for 4 or 5 years, said Matthew Smith of Massachusetts General Brigham Cancer Center. It's very treatable, but not curable, Smith told the AP. Most men in this situation would be treated with drugs and would not be advised to have either surgery or radiation therapy. How are people reacting to his diagnosis? Trump said in a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he wished Biden a fast, successful recovery. Former President Barack Obama's thoughts. Gave his thoughts and prayers. Joe B. Joe B, you gave your life for him, and all he gave you was thoughts and prayers. Listen, look, spoiler alert, I ain't sad that the motherfucker got cancer. I wouldn't wish cancer on anybody. You know, my dad died of cancer. It's a horrible thing. I wouldn't wish it. I wouldn't wish for anyone to have it. But if motherfuckers who deserve it already have it, well, there's nothing I can do. It wasn't me. You're like, man, you a cold motherfucker. And you're like, well, you're damn right. Because fuck that guy. Because he's a cold motherfucker too. And then Kamala Harris, you don't really care about this shit. So anyway, Sleepy Joe has got the big C. Thoughts and prayers. That's all you get from Obama. That's wild. Like I said, we'll tell you more about how long he's had it later in the show, in the propaganda watch. So January 6th, you remember that day when they opened the barricades and let the people in, and then they called it storming it. There was a young lady that was killed during all of that theater, and now the Trump administration has reached a $5 million settlement with Ashli Babbitt's family. So, and look at the stink. Look at that stink face. $5 million. I could use that. So the Trump administration has agreed to pay nearly $5 million to the family of Ashli Babbitt to settle a lawsuit brought by Babbitt's estate, the AP reported yesterday, citing a person with knowledge of the settlement. This is from Newsweek. Newsweek reached out to a Department of Justice spokesperson for comment via email on Monday. Babbitt was an Air Force veteran and a staunch Trump supporter who was fatally shot by a U.S. Capitol police officer on January 6, 2021, as she was attempting to enter the House Speaker's lobby during the riot what they called the riot at the U.S. Capitol. She was one of thousands of Trump supporters who rioted at the Capitol. I love how this is, they keep saying rioted, make sure you know that all of these people were just horrible people. At the Capitol tried to block Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election. Babbitt's estate filed a $30 million wrongful death lawsuit against the U.S. government last year. There she is. I think that's her mom right there. According to the Washington Post, the settlement between the U.S. Department of Justice and Babbitt's estate does not include an admission of wrongdoing. Of course, it never does. Trump, who urged his supporters to stop the steal at a rally in Washington before the riot, has championed Babbitt as a hero and referred to the more than 1,200 people who were convicted over the riot as J6 hostages. Trump pardoned or commuted the sentences of all convicted rioters on his first day back in office, January this year. He also directed that all who are currently held in prison be released immediately and ordered the Attorney General to pursue dismissal with prejudice to the government of all pending indictments in cases connected to the riot. Dismissing a case with prejudice means it cannot be refiled using the same facts that were cited in the original complaint. Babbitt's estate filed the wrongful death lawsuit last year, alleging that the Capitol police officer who fatally shot her failed to de-escalate the situation and did not give her any warnings or commands before firing his gun. So, in other words, he was acting like a cop. Ashli posed no threat to anyone, the lawsuit said of Babbitt, who was shot as she attempted to climb through the broken window of a barricaded door while Trump supporters tried to get into the House chamber. In August 2021, the officer who shot Babbitt broke his silence and said in a television interview that he fired as a last resort, adding that when he pulled the trigger, he didn't know if the person on the other side of the window was armed or unarmed. So just always assuming everybody's armed. Shoot first, literally shoot first and ask questions later. The officer was cleared of wrongdoings by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia and the Capitol Police. What is this? Okay, so what? I don't care what people are saying. Fuck them. Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, the conservative group representing Babbitt's family, told the Post his organization worked on the case pro bono and will not be getting any money from the settlement. Richard Driscoll, another lawyer involved in the case, told the Post Judicial Watch and the Babbitt family would pay for services that he provided. So, does that close the chapter on Ashli Babbitt? I mean, and it's not just happening at the Capitol. People are just shooting indiscriminately. These IDF, especially like in these big cities. Hey, Denver, good morning. Good to see you. Over there on Rockfin. You see it all the time. Just these cops, they're just like, get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the car. They look like Barney Fife, when he's like, all crazy on cocaine or roids, whatever the fuck they're doing. So just be careful out there, folks. I'm seeing a lot more of those videos too. People just getting pulled over for just the most bullshit stuff. So the massive tax cut that you've all been waiting for or not is going to probably pass the U.S. House committee vote. So I know all this good news U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tax cut bill has won approval from a key congressional committee to advance towards possible passage in the House of Representatives later this week. The rare Sunday night vote marks a big win for Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson. I wish he just went by my, so he could be My Johnson. After hardline Republican conservatives on Friday blocked the bill from clearing the House Budget Committee over a dispute involving spending cuts to the Medicaid health care program for lower-income Americans and the repeal of green energy tax credits. 4 hardline members of the committee's 21 Republicans allowed the legislation to advance by voting present. The bill passed in a 17-16 vote. Somebody missed the extra point, with all Democrats voting against it. The hardliners had spent much of the day in closed-door negotiations with House Republican leaders and White House officials. Johnson, giggity, met with Republican lawmakers shortly before the meeting, telling reporters that the changes agreed to were just some minor modifications, not a huge thing. That Johnson said it's not a huge thing. It's not a huge thing. Republican House Budget Chairman Jody Arrington said he expects deliberations to continue on into the week, right up until the time we put this big, beautiful bill before the House. These fuckers. Nonpartisan analysts say the bill, which would extend the 2017 tax cuts that were Trump's signature first-term legislative win, would add $3 trillion to $5 trillion to the $36.2 trillion trillion dollar national debt over the next decade. So the people who are bitching and moaning about, oh, the deficit's too high, deficit's so high, that deficit's so damn high. Now they just want to add to it. See, bait and switch. Yeah, people need to teach some of these. Now the youngins, I'm feeling good about the youngins. A lot of them. I ain't taking this bullshit, but still, we need to tell all these kids, make sure that they know the fuckery is afoot, and when they say they're going to do something, they ain't going to do it. They ain't going to do it. Credit rating agency Moody's cited the rising debt, which it said was on track to reach 134% of gross domestic product by 2035 for its decision on Friday to downgrade the U.S.'s credit rating. Oh, that happened under you, Trumpy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in an interview with CNN on Sunday that the bill would spur economic growth economic growth for these rich-ass people's pockets, sufficient to offset any growth in the debt, adding that he did not put much credence in Moody's downgrade. Oh, that Treasury Secretary is so fucking stupid. Is this him? No, that's, what's his face? That's the Fed guy, I think. Economic experts have warned that the downgrade following previous downgrades by Fitch Ratings and S&P is a clear sign that the U.S. has too much debt and lawmakers need to either increase revenues or spend less. You could probably take some off that fucking military budget there. That's your $1 trillion gorilla in the room. Trump's Republicans hold a 220 to 213 majority in the House and are divided over how deeply to slash spending to offset the cost of the tax cuts. Get on the ground now. Yep, that's right, Denver. Hardliners want cuts to Medicaid, which some Republican senators have pushed back against, saying it would hurt the very voters who elected Trump in November and whose support they will need in 2026 when control of Congress is again up for grabs. Yes, those midterms, that's going to be next year. The bill's cuts would kick 8.6 million people off of Medicaid. It also aims to eliminate taxes on tips and some overtime income, both Trump campaign promises. Now, the taxes on like tips in restaurants, is that what they're talking about? I say shit. Yeah, that's nice. Now, that's good. That's some tax on tips is a bullshit tax. It is a really bullshit tax. And so that part is good. And on some overtime income, that works too. That actually helps. But this other shit, no, that ain't helping nothing. But rich people. While boosting defense spending, they see he does this and then he does this boosting defense spending and providing more funds for Trump's border crack. See, no good. Democratic U.S. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut said the credit rating cut spelled trouble for Americans. That's a big deal. That means that we are likely headed for a recession. Murphy told NBC's Meet the Press, "These guys are running the economy recklessly." Well, so was your old boss there. None of these fuckers are running the economy. At least not for us. Everybody else, it seems to be doing just fine. Those rich people seem to be doing very, very well. And now they're about to get even better with these tax cuts. So, y'all heard about these escapes down in Louisiana, right? In New Orleans, right? So I think they caught 4 of them now. So search continues for 6 of 10 men who escaped from New Orleans jail. Reward for info increases. I love this story. Any story that involves a toilet being a hero, that's beautiful. Days after 10 men escaped from a New Orleans jail by slipping through a hole, giggity, behind a toilet and scaling a wall, 6 of them remained on the run Monday, and up to $20,000 in rewards was being offered for information leading to the capture of each escapee. The FBI on Sunday increased its reward amount from $5,000 to $10,000 per escapee, while the Crime Stoppers reward was increased from $2,000 to $5,000. And the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives was offering $5,000 in cash. The latest arrest came Monday when a 4th fugitive, Gary Price, was taken into custody. FBI Special Agent Jonathan Trapp said during a news conference that he believes members of the public may be helping them, and if that's the case, would be arrested on charges of aiding or abetting them. The men range in age from 19 to 42 and face a variety of charges, including aggravated assault, domestic abuse, battery, and murder. While 3 of the men were quickly caught and a 4th later, a multi-agency task force has been assembled to scour the region for the remaining fugitives. Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hudson said the men were able to get out of the Orleans Justice Center because of defective locks. Wow, crummy infrastructure, even in their jails. How about that? And possibly with the help from people inside her department. It's almost impossible, not completely, but almost impossible for anybody to get out of this facility without help, she said Friday of the jail where 1,400 people are being held. Just days before the escape, Hudson's office had asked for money to fix faulty locks and cell doors. During the city's capital improvement plan hearing on May 12th, Jaworski J. Mallett, chief of corrections for the Orleans Justice Center, said the current system at the jail was built for a minimum custody type of inmate. Mallett went on to say that some of the cell unit doors and locks have been manipulated to the point that not only are they not secure, but some can't even be closed properly. But he classified many at the jail as high security inmates who are awaiting trials for violent offenses, including charges such as murder, assault, and rape. Surveillance footage shared with the media during a news conference showed the escapees sprinting out of the facility, some wearing orange clothing and others in white. They scaled a fence using blankets to protect themselves from barbed wire, and some sprinted across an interstate and into a neighborhood. The escape. Dun, 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 dun. A law enforcement photograph obtained by the AP shows the opening through which the men escaped. Above the hole are scrawled messages that include "Too easy, LOL." I'm sorry. Some of these guys are probably scumbags for real. Above the hole are scrawled messages that include "Too easy, LOL" with an arrow pointing at the gap. I don't know, that's pretty funny. Friday's escape is drawing intense scrutiny and criticism. It took hours for sheriff's officials to realize the men had escaped, and then more time to alert New Orleans police, even though some of the missing men are accused of violent offenses, and they escaped into a neighborhood less than 2 miles from the city's famous French Quarter. Somebody, well, to be fair, there's probably a hell of a lot more criminals out there along with them that the cops ain't looking for. Someone clearly dropped the ball, and there's no excuse for that. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill said on the tweeters, this investigation's gone into the shitter. Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams, who said he prosecuted one of the people who escaped, told New Orleans news station WWL-TV, that's Channel 4 New Orleans for you, that he was angry. This is absurd. He said, I don't understand how it is feasible that it could have occurred. Why did it take hours to learn about the escape? The escapees yanked open a door to enter the cell with the hole around 12:30 a.m. By 1:30 a.m., they were outside the jail, according to the sheriff's office. So it took them about an hour to get out. That's wild. But it was not until a routine morning head count more than 7 hours later that law enforcement learned that they were missing. Officials from the sheriff's office say no deputy was at the pod where the fugitives had been held. There was a civilian employee there, but she had stepped away to get food, they said. Oh, no, AP, you may not do that. There appeared to be a further delay before New Orleans police were notified. You've given a head start to some very dangerous people, Williams told WWL-TV. Soon after the escape, one of the men, Kendall Miles, was apprehended in the French Quarter after a brief foot chase. 3 sheriff's employees have been placed on suspension pending the outcome of an investigation. It was not immediately clear whether any of the employees were suspected of helping with the escape. Officials also didn't say if the employee who left to get food was among the 3 suspended. Most of the men are in their 20s. Miles and the other 2 men who were earlier captured, Robert Moody and DeCannon Dennis, were taken by a helicopter to a state correctional facility outside the New Orleans area, Louisiana State Police said. The agency said one of the men became hostile during the transfer, requiring troopers to use a spit hood. They did not identify the man. I don't know what a spit hood is. That doesn't seem right. Dennis had been charged with armed robbery with a firearm and illegal carrying of a weapon during a crime of violence, according to Murrill, the Attorney General. Moody was facing a weapons charge as well as charges of attempted second-degree battery and obstruction. Murrill said both men will face additional charges stemming from the escape. Yeah, they'll probably be charged with attempting to escape. One of the fugitives, Derek Groves, was convicted on 2 charges of second-degree murder and 2 charges of attempted second-degree murder last year for his role in the 2018 Mardi Gras Day shootings of 2 men. Another escapee, Corey Boyd, had pleaded not guilty to a pending second-degree murder charge. So the Justice Center opened in 2015, making it a relatively new facility, but it has still experienced violence and security problems. Well, yeah, because it's in Louisiana. Hudson said the facility is around 60% staff, so the staff is stretched thin. Wow, yeah, you would think that cops would be getting a shit ton of money, though, right? Maybe that's why they're spread thin. Bianca Brown, chief financial officer for the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office, said the jail can't afford a maintenance and service contract to fix problems such as broken doors, lock replacements, and other ailing infrastructure. The jail contained numerous high-security people convicted of violent offenses who required restrictive housing environment that did not exist, said Jay Mallett, Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office Chief of Corrections. The Sheriff's Office was in the process of transferring dozens to more secure locations. Hudson is facing re-election this year, and at least one of her opponents, former interim New Orleans Police Superintendent Michelle Woodfork, demanded she answer questions about the escape. Williams, the district attorney, appointed Woodford to a position in his office last year. Noting the sheriff's race was starting, Hudson called the timing of the escape suspicious. She did not elaborate. Well, and there's talking about how some of these guys got captured, right? Using facial recognition around New Orleans, which has started to become more like the big cities like New York and Boston with all these cameras all over the place. As rights group raised alarm over the first U.S. city's broad use of facial recognition tracking. Amid a Washington Post investigation and pushback from civil liberties defenders, the New Orleans police recently paused their sweeping and apparently unlawful use without public oversight of a private network of over 200 surveillance cameras and facial recognition technology to track and arrest criminal suspects. On Monday, the Post published an expose detailing how the New Orleans Police Department, the NOPD, relied on real-time facial recognition technology provided by Project NOLA, New Orleans, Louisiana, that's what that stands for, a nonprofit organization operating out of the University of New Orleans, UNO, to locate and apprehend suspects. Project NOLA's website says the group operates the largest, most cost-efficient, and successful networked high-definition crime camera program in America, which was created in 2009 by criminologist Brian Lagarde to help reduce crime by dramatically increasing police efficiency and citizen awareness. More cameras. The Post's Douglas McMillan and Aaron Schaefer described Project NOLA as a surveillance method without a known precedent in any major American city that may violate municipal guardrails around use of the technology. As McMillan and Schaefer reported, police increasingly use facial recognition software to identify unknown culprits from still images usually taken by surveillance cameras at or near the scene of a crime. New Orleans police took this technology a step further, utilizing a private network of more than 200 facial recognition cameras to watch over the streets, constantly monitoring for wanted suspects and automatically pinging officers' mobile phones through an app to convey the names and current locations of possible matches. Wow. This despite a 2022 municipal law limiting police use of facial recognition. That ordinance reversed the city's earlier outright ban on the technology and was criticized by civil liberties advocates for dropping a provision that required permission from a judge or magistrate commissioner prior to use. This is the facial recognition technology nightmare scenario that we have been worried about, Nathan Freed Wessler, deputy director with the ACLU's Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, told the Post. This is the government giving itself the power to track anyone, for that matter, everyone, as we go about our lives walking around in public. Well, I shan't be going to New Orleans anytime soon. Since 2023, Project NOLA, which was paused last month amid the Post's investigation, has contributed to dozens of arrests. Proponents, including NOPD and city officials, credit the collaboration with Project NOLA for a decrease in crime in the city that had the nation's highest homicide rate as recently as 2022. Project NOLA has even been featured in the true crime series Real Time Crime. New Orleans Police Commissioner Ann Kirkpatrick said in an email last month that she is sure that the use of Project NOLA meets all the requirements of the law and policies. However, critics point to racial bias in facial recognition algorithms, which disproportionately misidentify racial minorities as a particular cause for concern. According to one landmark federal study published in 2019, Black, Asian, and Native American people were up to 100 times likelier to be misidentified by facial recognition algorithms than crackers. The ACLU said in a statement that Project NOLA supercharges the risks. Consider Randall Reed, for example. He was wrongfully arrested based on faulty Louisiana facial recognition technology, despite never having set foot in the state. The false match cost him his freedom, his dignity, and thousands of dollars in legal fees. That misidentification happened based on a still image run through a facial recognition search in an investigation. This is just shit that leads. If cops weren't lazy enough already, this is really like, this is going to make them even lazier. That's why cops, one of the reasons why cops are shit, because they're not trained to do actual police work. They're not. They're out there being bullies and making sure you don't fuck up what the man's got going on. We cannot ignore the real possibility of this tool being weaponized against marginalized communities, especially immigrants, activists, and others whose only crime is speaking out or challenging government policies, ACLU of Louisiana Executive Director Alana Odom said. These individuals could be added to Project NOLA's watch list without the public's knowledge and with no accountability or transparency on the part of the police departments. Facial recognition technology poses a direct threat to the fundamental rights of every individual and has no place in our cities, Odoms asserted. We call on the NOPD and the city of New Orleans to halt this program indefinitely and terminate all use of live feed facial recognition technology. Hear, hear. Yeah. So you're just walking down the street. You might happen to be black. You might happen to be Asian. Or you might be Native American, and all of a sudden the van shows up with dudes with masks, pulls you into the van because the technology fucked up. Yep. Yes, sir. Don't want it. No, sir. Not at all. Speaking of terrorists, let's go to Israel. Because you know where we're going there. Israeli strikes in Gaza kill 125 people over 24 hours amid ramped-up IDF offensive. Gaza's health ministry said yesterday that at least 125 Palestinians were killed and 364 were wounded over the previous 24-hour period as the Israeli military expanded military operations in the Strip. The health ministry said that the bodies of 11 Palestinians who were killed in previous Israeli attacks were also recovered. There are still a number of victims under the rubble and on the streets, and ambulance and civil defense crews cannot reach them, the ministry wrote on Telegram. Heavy Israeli strikes hit the southern city of Khan Yunis after the Israeli military ordered the evacuation of the area, threatening that an unprecedented attack was coming. The IDF will launch an unprecedented attack to destroy the capabilities of terrorist organizations in this area. Avicii Adre, I swear to God, that sounds like Pig Latin. The IDF's Arabic spokesman wrote on tweeters. Adre ordered Palestinians fleeing the area to head to Al-Mawasi, a tent camp on the coast that has come under frequent IDF attacks. From this moment, Khan Yunis Governorate will be considered a dangerous combat zone, he wrote. Medical sources told Al Jazeera that the Israeli military launched at least 30 strikes on Khan Yunis on Monday, and attacks also hit the central and northern parts of Gaza. More than 100 Palestinians have been reported killed on a daily basis for the past few days as the Israeli military has launched a new phase of its genocidal war on Gaza, an offensive it has dubbed Gideon's Chariots. The purpose of the assault is the full Israeli takeover of Gaza and the destruction of any remaining buildings. The ramped-up military operations have exacerbated the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Israel has maintained a total blockade on Gaza since March 2nd and allowed 5 aid trucks into the Strip on Monday. I'll tell you about that in a second. A step Israeli officials have made clear is about maintaining U.S. support for its plans to take over and destroy Gaza. Aid groups say hundreds of aid trucks are needed to enter per day to bring real relief to the civilian population, as the majority of charity kitchens that many rely on for food have shut down. So, yeah, we'll get to, wait a minute, is that next? Hang on a second. Strikes killer. Okay, yeah. All right, we'll get to that in a second. All right, so we're going around the horn here as Israel pops off on Yemen as well, particularly Yemeni ports. More than a dozen Israeli warplanes launched airstrikes on at least 2 major ports in Yemen on Friday, according to Israeli and Yemeni officials. The IDF issued evacuation notices for 3 areas in Yemen last week, threatening retaliation to Houthi missile and drone attacks. The IDF announced that strikes on Friday afternoon, saying 15 fighter jets dropped more than 30 munitions on the ports of Hodeidah and Al-Salif. both on Yemen's west coast. Israeli media reports also stated the port of Ras Isa was targeted in the bombings, though Tel Aviv made no mention of that area. Israeli military claimed the attack destroyed terrorist infrastructure belonging to the Houthi militant group, formerly known as Ansar Allah, which has governed much of Yemen since 2014. The Houthis have carried out a number of missile and drone strikes on Israel in protest of its bombing campaign in Gaza and have maintained a blockade on Israel-linked shipping transiting the Red Sea. The Yemeni Health Ministry said one person was killed in the Israeli air raids and 9 others injured, per the Houthi-linked Al Masira media outlet. The IDF issued evacuation warnings for Hodeidah, Al Salif, and Ras Isa on May 14th, with Army spokesman Avichai Adre, there it is again, that pig Latin name, ordering residents to leave the areas until further notice, while threatening a response to a Houthi missile launch 2 days prior. The Ras Isa fuel port was the target of a U.S. airstrike last month that reportedly killed 80 people and left 150 wounded. Washington carried out at least 1,000 strikes on Yemen beginning in March in response to the Houthi attacks on Israel and Red Sea shipping, but reached a truce with the group last week. Under the new agreement, U.S. forces will refrain from bombing Yemen so long as Ansar Allah ceases its attacks on American vessels. Meanwhile, Yemeni armed forces declare Haifa port under naval siege. The Yemeni Armed Forces, the YAF, announced yesterday the imposition of a naval blockade on Haifa port in occupied Palestine, declaring the strategic Israeli-controlled port a new target. The move comes in response to the continued and escalating Israeli aggression against Gaza and its blockade-induced starvation campaign. In an official statement, Brigadier General Yahya Saree, spokesperson for the YAF, cautioned all maritime companies whose vehicles are docked at or en route to Haifa to treat the announcement and future warnings with utmost seriousness. He is saying, do not fuck around because you will find out. This escalation follows the successful enforcement of a blockade on the port of al-Rashrash, also known as Eilat, which ceased operations under Yemeni military pressure. Brigadier General Saree reaffirmed that the Yemeni military will not hesitate to escalate further in support of the Palestinian people and their resistance. He stressed that all military actions against Israel would only cease if the aggression on Gaza ends and the blockade is fully lifted. The armed forces will not hesitate to take any additional necessary measures in solidarity with Gaza, Saree declared. He also underscored that Sanaa's position remained firm in backing Palestine's right to resist occupation and systematic oppression. The Haifa port blockade is the latest phase in an expanding military campaign led by Yemen. On May 4th, the Yemeni armed forces declared their intention to impose a complete aerial blockade on Israeli authorities by targeting the Ben Gurion airport. Subsequent reports confirmed multiple strikes targeting Ben Gurion, leading to evacuations and forcing settlers into shelters. These operations were described as a direct response to the Israeli occupation siege on Gaza and its ongoing airstrikes across the Strip. In parallel with military actions, the Yemeni leadership in Sana'a has issued repeated warnings to international airlines, urging them to avoid Israeli airspace entirely. These warnings have coincided with a string of attacks that disrupted civilian aviation and highlighted Yemen's growing regional military influence. So, yeah, Yemen is like, dude, you know our rep already. We don't fold. You can, they bombed us 1,000 times. We're still here. The same. In the UK, a major supermarket chain is pushing back against Israel with a ban of their own as cooperative group members vote to ban Israeli products from supermarkets. Some of you watching over in the UK may know about this more than I would, but Members of the cooperative group, one of the UK's biggest supermarket chains, have voted to remove Israeli products from its shelves over the ongoing attack on the Gaza Strip. Around 73% of the Consumer Co-op's members supported the non-binding motion that called on the board to show moral courage and leadership by banning Israeli products. The motion cited a previous motion passed following the the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 to boycott Russian products. We urge the board to show moral courage and leadership, apply the same ethical principles and values it did to Russia, and take all Israeli products off the shelves, read the motion. While the board is not obliged to implement the demands of the motion, it said it would take it into consideration as it reviewed the co-op's sourcing policy. They're going to talk to their Zionist handlers and see if that's okay or not. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be. We expect our review on the sourcing policy to complete towards the end of the summer, said a spokesperson of the board. Campaigners with the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement, BDS, have since 2005 called for consumers to boycott Israeli products until it complies with its obligations under international law. Following the Hamas-led attack and Israel's bombing and invasion of Gaza in 2023, the BDS movement has stepped up its calls over what it says is a genocide currently taking place in the enclave. Well, they're not the only ones saying it. The health ministry said on Sunday has reached over 53,000 and over 121,000 wounded. More than 10,000 Palestinians are also missing and presumed dead, and that's not to count for who's under the rubble as well. There have been boycotts in many parts of the world against U.S. companies over the country's support for Israel. Pakistan's Interior Ministry said on Saturday that around 160 people had been arrested after groups of Palestine supporters carried out 20 separate attacks on KFC restaurants with one employee shot dead. Wow. Calls for boycott intensified after Israeli franchises of international brands such as McDonald's and Pizza Hut offered free meals to Israeli soldiers before the war on Gaza began. Local franchises of such brands are usually operating on a license basis where a local company adopts the menu, uniforms, and branding of the company to sell to a local market. So they're talking about this, and that would be a huge blow there in the UK, I would imagine. But like I said, if you're in the UK, you probably know about that a lot more than I do. Meanwhile, tens of thousands march in the Netherlands to protest against the Gaza genocide. Love to see the numbers like that. We just need more sustained numbers. People to just stay out there. Tens of thousands of red-clad protesters marched through The Hague to call on the Netherlands government to do more to halt Israel's onslaught in Gaza. Organizers said it was the country's biggest demonstration in 2 decades as rally participants pressed the Dutch government on Sunday to take action against Israel's genocide in Gaza. The crowd that gathered outside the government seat was estimated to number more than 100,000 people, according to organizers. That might be sweetening the pot a little bit there. Police did not give an estimate. Sometimes I'm ashamed of the government because it doesn't want to set any limits, said 59-year-old teacher Yolando Neo. We are calling on the Dutch government stop political, economic, and military support to Israel as long as it blocks access to aid supplies and while it is guilty of genocide, war crimes, and structural human rights violations in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories, said Marjan Rozema of Amnesty International. Israel's army announced extensive ground operations on Sunday, as we told you, as part of its newly expanded campaign in the Gaza Strip. Rescuers reported dozens killed in a wave of Israeli attacks. The ICJ is in The Hague is hearing a case brought by South Africa arguing that the Gaza war breached the 1948 UN Genocide Convention, an accusation Israel has strongly denied. Meanwhile, we were talking about they let 5 people in. They let 5 trucks in. Israel's easing of Gaza siege totally insufficient to address spiraling hunger crisis. Aid agencies have warned that Israel's decision to slightly ease its suffocating 11-week siege on Gaza will do little to slow the spiraling hunger crisis, with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the Strip now close to starvation. Fuckhead McGee, under pressure from the U.S., announced on Sunday that his government would allow a basic amount of food to enter. However, relief agencies noted that Tel Aviv has yet to disclose how many trucks will be permitted daily or what goods will be allowed in. An Israeli official said on Monday that dozens of aid trucks would enter Gaza in the coming days, a figure far below the 600 trucks per day that humanitarian groups say are needed to begin alleviating the crisis. Discussions are ongoing over how aid agencies will distribute the supplies as Israel continues to escalate its devastating military offensive. The UN has been approached by Israeli authorities to resume limited aid delivery, and we are in discussions with them on how this would take place, given the conditions on the ground. Tamara al-Rifai, spokesperson for the UN Agencies for Palestinian Refugees, that's UNRWA, told The New Arab, this is the site we're using. The source says the minimum required would be 500 to 600 trucks per day, which was the standard before the war, and the agreed figure during the ceasefire, she added. Just 9 trucks were allowed to cross the border on Monday. Tom Fletcher, who heads the UN humanitarian agency, called it a drop in the ocean. Israel has blocked nearly all goods from entering Gaza for almost 3 months, worsening the hunger crisis and causing widespread shortages of fuel and medical supplies, which have crippled emergency services. The World Food Program has been without food stocks for almost a month. Dozens of community kitchens and bakeries have shut down. The World Central Kitchen exhausted its supplies on May 8th. More than 100,000 tons of food have been left rotting at the border for weeks, prevented from entering by Israeli authorities. A global food monitor recently reported that more than 20% of Gaza's 2.2 million residents were now facing catastrophic levels of hunger, and warned that the entire population could reach crisis level by September if the siege is not lifted. We need at least 600 trucks per day to begin halting the collapse of the humanitarian system. Anything less is totally insufficient. Amjad Shawa, the head of the Palestinian NGO network, that's PNGO, in Gaza, told the New Era. We're facing a complex humanitarian disaster that's affected all areas, which requires massive supplies, he said. Aid agencies have for weeks accused Israel of deliberately starving civilians and have urged global powers to intervene to end the blockade. Will you act decisively to prevent genocide and ensure respect for international humanitarian law? UN Humanitarian Chief Tom Fletcher asked members of the UN Security Council last week. The World Food Program and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs did not respond to requests for comment by the time of this publication. Netanyahu's announcement on Sunday came just hours after the Israeli military said it had begun an extensive invasion of Gaza, as we told you about that. Over the past week, more than 500 Palestinians have been killed in relentless Israeli strikes. And then we told you about this. So Israel says it'll begin taking over aid distribution in Gaza next week, despite overwhelming opposition from basically everybody, humanitarian organizations, and even some of its closest allies. Under the plan, Palestinians will be forced to travel to designated locations to collect limited amounts of supplies. Distribution will be overseen by the Israeli military, U.S. private security contractors, and a newly established body called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Oh, that's a nice little toxic soup of assholes right there. Aid groups have refused to cooperate, saying the plan was being implemented for military purposes and designed to further displace Palestinians. The strategy has reportedly received support from the Trump administration, which has been pressing aid agencies to comply because, the widow Adelson is like, what's going on? Speed this up. Come on, Sonny. Take a little break here for a second. What's going on, everybody? Everybody's hanging out. Hope your weekend was fine. Mine was okay. The Saturday night thing really pissed me off, though. I'm just like, come on. We were talking about shaving your crotch, and then all of a sudden, the sun is a prude. All right, back to the countdown here. As leaked proposal reveals Israeli plan to trap civilians, divide Gaza into 3 isolated zones. This is what they were talking about, militarizing the aid. A leaked Israeli military proposal reveals plans to divide the Gaza Strip into 3 separate civilian zones, each cut off by military-occupied corridors, if ongoing ceasefire talks with Hamas do not go as planned. The proposal, shown to foreign diplomats and obtained by the Sunday Times, outlines an extensive redesign of Gaza's internal geography, consolidating Israeli control and heavily restricting Palestinian movements. And what else is new? Under the plan, Palestinians would be confined to northern, central, and southern strips of land with exclusive military zones between them. Movement between the zones would be prohibited without Israeli-issued permission, and goods would be subject to barcode scanning and other tracking systems. The Israeli military has ordered mass evacuations from several areas, pushing civilians toward designated humanitarian zones near Rafah in southern Gaza. Portions of Rafah itself are already surrounded by Israeli occupation forces and marked for military use. Yet another new military corridor would be constructed to link Gaza's southern and central parts, reportedly narrower than the existing Netzarim corridor. According to sources told the Sunday Times that bulldozers will flatten the route and install military infrastructure, effectively severing civilian access between the north and south. An expanded northern military zone would stretch beyond Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun, with new roads and staging areas built for the Israeli army. These areas are to be cleared within 3 weeks. An even wider buffer zone would also encircle the entire Gaza Strip. According to the leaked map, 12 locations within the civilian strips have been designated for humanitarian aid distribution. These sites align with an Israeli proposal to privatize aid delivery among companies monitored by Israeli forces, a system resembling the privatized checkpoints around the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. In July of last year, Israel announced it was preparing to create experimental humanitarian enclaves, or bubbles, as part of a plan to replace Hamas governance of Gaza following the current war. Prime Minister Shitbag McGee Fuckface, his office confirmed Saturday that negotiations are ongoing in the Qatari capital of Doha, with options ranging from a temporary ceasefire to a broader deal for the complete disarmament and exile of Hamas and release of all Israeli captives in exchange for ending the war. Under the Prime Minister's direction, even at this hour, the negotiating team in Doha is working to exhaust every possibility for a deal, whether according to the Witkoff outline or within the framework of ending the war, which would include the release of all hostages, the exile of Hamas terrorists, and the disarmament of the Gaza Strip, Shitbag Fuckface said in a statement on Sunday. On Friday, the Israeli military announced it had launched the first moves, as we told you, with Operation Gideon's Chariot, a renewed ground invasion aimed at reoccupying the area through overwhelming force. I think when Obama was in, when he was in office, they did the surge. And this kind of sounds similar to that. And then it tells you about the deaths and stuff like that. So, yeah. So they're trying to get rid of these people. They're trying to erase them, and they don't really care if, I think at this point, they don't really care if they kill them or not. They don't, no one seems to be in any sort of situation where they have the power to stop them, that they're trying to stop them to do that. I don't know what Trump's doing. I think Trump's playing like some sort of head games. We said, well, he keeps talking about the starving people in Palestine, but yet he still keeps giving that motherfucker money So, maybe some good news here between Russia and Ukraine. You know, prisoner swap's always fun, right? Russia and Ukraine agreed a prisoner swap at Istanbul talks. You know, they're talking about trying to end this war between them. So Moscow and Kiev each agreed. This is from Libertarian Institute, by the way. Will Porter getting a double dip today. We love some Will Porter over there. I think he does antiwar.com too. I think they're like kind of interchangeable between anti-war and the Libertarian Institute. Moscow and Kiev each agreed to exchange 1,000 prisoners of war during Friday's peace talks in Istanbul, not Constantinople. The first direct sit-down between the warring states in more than 3 years. Little progress was made toward a broader truce, however. Speaking after the meeting, Russia's chief negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, said he was satisfied with the first round of talks in light of the prisoner swap deal and suggested the dialogue would resume in the future. We agree that each side will present its vision for the possible future ceasefire and write it out in detail, he said. Once that's done, and this has been discussed too, we think it will be reasonable to continue our negotiation. Medinsky added that Ukraine had urged for direct meetings between the leaders of the two countries and said the request would be taken under advisement. While the head of Kiev's delegation, Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, did not reveal any plans for additional talks, he confirmed the upcoming prisoner swap in comments to reporters, saying a date had been set without disclosing it. Ahead of the meeting in the Turkish capital, Ukrainian officials demanded a complete and unconditional ceasefire for at least 1 month, a sweeping POW swap, and a sit-down between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. On Friday, Zelensky urged for new economic sanctions on Moscow should it refuse those terms. Our position, if the Russians reject a full and unconditional ceasefire and an end to killings, tough sanctions must follow. Pardon me. Pressure on Russia must be maintained until Russia is ready to end the war. Little Scarface wrote on social media. Hang on a second. There we go. Maybe. Though the Kremlin has said it's open to a ceasefire and attempted to implement a brief unilateral pause to coincide with Victory Day celebrations earlier this month, Russia now claims sovereignty over 5 formerly Ukrainian regions and insists it will not give them up. That is a non-starter for Kiev, who has refused to accept Russian control over any of its pre-2022 territory and demands the complete withdrawal of all Russian forces from Ukraine. Trumpy has repeatedly vowed to bring the war to an end, but said earlier this week that no progress would be made in the peace talks until he personally met with Putin. Following the negotiations on Friday, Trump said his administration was working to set up such a meeting. I think it's time for us to do just that, he told reporters, after adding, Putin and I will meet, and I think we'll solve it, maybe not. At least we'll know, and if we don't solve it, it'll be very interesting. Yeah. Thanks for that, there, Trump. Wait, what? How dare you? Meanwhile, Romania, Poland, and Portugal have elections. These are some of the results, in case you were on the edge of your seat, wondering about that. Millions of voters across 3 European countries cast their ballots in an electoral Super Sunday over the weekend amid fears of far-right gains, particularly in Romania and Poland. However, the centrists held their ground in 2 European Union and NATO member nations bordering war-torn Ukraine, providing a boost to the West. Portugal's center-right governing party also secured a parliamentary win, but the far-right made record gains. In Portugal, where's Choosy? We need Choosy, get the Carnation Revolution back up. Brussels can breathe a cautious sigh of relief after pro-EU candidates emerged victorious in the 3 bellwether elections. But while the center is holding for now, far-right populist forces continue to grow in all 3 countries, the latest in a string of far-right surges in Europe. Last summer, EU elections witnessed a clear turn to the right in the European Parliament, shaking up governments across the 27-member bloc and leaving mainstream political parties at a crossroads. Despite Super Sunday results, Eurosceptic parties continue to garner support. So in Romania's presidential election, which concluded with a clear victory for centrist candidate Nicusor Dan, who secured 54% of the vote against nationalist rival George Simeon's 46%. The closely watched contest, which has geopolitical implications for the EU, drew the country's highest electoral turnout in 25 years, with about 65% of eligible voters casting their ballots. The election was marked by a dramatic comeback for Dan, the 55-year-old mayor of Bucharest, who trailed in the early stages but surged ahead in the final days of the ballot. Probably got those nudie pictures of Simeon and say, hey, look at this guy. Dan, a former mathematician. How can you be a former mathematician? Aren't you always a mathematician, even if you're not one? Pledged to clamp down on corruption and support the EU and NATO. Simeon ran a campaign rooted in Euroscepticism. What did I say? Euroscepticism before? Euroscepticism and nationalist rhetoric, pledging to halt military aid to Ukraine and overturn the ruling establishment in a style similar to U.S. President Trump. When you run like Trump, though, you see what happened in Canada. TSK. His early lead raised fears among liberal segments of the population, but as results came in, it became clear that the fix was in. That voters had rallied behind Dan's vision of a centrist Romania. Coming on the heels of the annulment of a previous vote in December due to alleged Russian interference, the stakes of Sunday's election were very high. Many saw the contest as a referendum on Romania's future political direction and its role within the EU and NATO. The high turnout reflected a pushback against rising right-wing populism, reinforcing Romania's Western orientation at a time of regional instability. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Ursula, was quick to congratulate the pro-EU winner, saying Dan's victory would help work towards a strong Europe. Looking ahead, Dan plans to form a coalition with both center-left and center-right parties, aiming to stabilize the political landscape and deliver on its promises of reform. Speaking to private television station Digi24, Dan said he wanted a new coalition government to include all four center-right and center-left parliamentary parties. Well, ain't that nice? Meanwhile, in Poland, according to a second exit poll released late on Sunday night, Rafał Trzaskowski, a deputy leader of Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the guy's name's Donald Tusk, centrist civic platform, that's the PO party, that's a pissed off party. I'm going to start the PO party here in America. I'm pissed off as a motherfucker. Wait, what? The PO party. What happened? What is going on here, little fishies? I keep missing all these things. Steve G and Desert Mantis, what's up? And Kilria and Gregorians and Kate, you all just came here. For some reason, and Frank's in here too. What's up, buddy? I don't know, my chat just froze, and now all of a sudden it unfrozen, and just like it's like the ice maker, and all of a sudden all these names came out. Good to see all of you. Good morning to you. Carol Nawrocki of the Conservative Law and Justice Party came in second with 29.1% of the vote. The vote was also a referendum on Tusk's government formed in December 2023 after ending the PIS's 8-year rule, which was marked by undermining of the judiciary and the media. If the election result not expected until I guess it was last night they were going into, goes as suggested by the exit poll, Trzaskowski and Nawrocki will compete in a second round runoff on June 1st, with neither winning more than 50% in the first round. Meanwhile, other candidates in the first round, including Slawomir Menson from the far-right Confederation Party and Magdalena Bejat from the Lewica, the left party, will be eliminated. There is a lot of work ahead of us, and we need determination. Trzaskowski told supporters on Sunday night. He cautioned that the real work of government had just begun, given the deep political polarization within Polish society. Commenting on the tweeters, Prime Minister Tusk, who has forged a pro-European track, said the next 2 weeks would decide the future of Poland. Meanwhile, Nawrocki's camp emphasized the need to prevent what is described as a monopoly on power by the civic coalition. Social issues dominated the campaign trail, with Nawrocki framing himself as a guardian of conservative values, because we need more of those, while Trzaskowski, I don't know what the fuck that name is, drew support from voters for his pledges to back abortion and LGBTQ rights. Both camps are now focused on mobilizing supporters and appealing to the voters of the likely eliminated candidates. As the decisive runoff seems likely, the president in Poland wields the power to veto laws, so the winner will have direct influence over whether Tusk's pro-EU government can implement its agenda. Foreign policy, judicial reform, and civil rights are all at stake. A victory in the second round could enable Tusk's government to implement an agenda that includes rolling back judicial changes introduced by PIS that critics say have undermined the independence of the courts. However, if Nawrocki wins, the impasse that has existed since Tusk became prime minister in 2023 will continue. Now to Portugal. The parliamentary election saw the governing center-right Democratic Alliance, the AD, led by Prime Minister Luis Montenegro, take 89 seats in the 230-seat parliament, well short of the 116 needed for a majority. The party garnered 32.7% of the vote. The Socialist Party, the PS, and the far-right Chega Party finished even in second place, both securing 58 seats. The Socialists suffered significant losses compared with the previous elections, prompting party leader Pedro Nuno Santos to resign. With the results of several seats yet to be called, Chega might emerge as the main opposition party. Chega, which ran on an anti-immigration platform, won a record 22.6% of the vote, an impressive rise from the 1.3% it received in its debut election in 2019. Ooh. Rising up. We didn't win these elections, but we made history, Chega leader Andre Ventura told the AFP news agency. The system of two-party rule in Portugal is over, Ventura, who is a former sports commentator on television, said. Chega's surge, meanwhile, underscored the growing traction of far-right politics in Portugal, while the Liberal Initiative, the IL, also made gains, securing 9 seats. The people want this government and this prime minister, Montenegro told his cheering supporters after the results were announced. But even with the backing of the upstart business-friendly party IL, the AD would still need the support of Chega to pass legislation. For his part, though, Montenegro, a 52-year-old former lawyer, has refused any alliance with the anti-establishment party, saying it's unreliable and not suited to governing. Oh, well, that's not nice. The vote was dominated by inflation, housing, and immigration issues. Inflation, housing, and immigration issues. Where does that sound familiar? The vote's outcome raises the prospects of legislative gridlock or the need for ad hoc agreements on key policies, which would complicate an already tricky political backdrop in the country of 10.6 million people. Sunday's election, the third in as many years, was called after Montenegro failed to win a parliamentary vote of confidence in March. He was forced to call the snap election after his opposition questioned his integrity over the dealings of his family's consultancy firm. He was denied any wrongdoing. Montenegro's government will need to carefully navigate policy priorities and build consensus across party lines, all while trying to maintain public trust and address persistent economic and social concerns. So, lots of elections going on there in Europe. And and that's what happens, when you divide the people like that, that's when the far right just kind of sneaks right in there. What's Global? What's up? Good to see you. Hey, Wesley's in here too. It's a real hotbed of dissent. Hell yeah, that's right, brother man. Good to see all y'all. Why won't you do my bidding? So, meanwhile, down in Brazil, remember that movie? Terry Gilliam, Brazil. Former President Bolsonaro's coup trial has begun. Dun, dun, dun. There he is. The trial of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has begun with charges that he plotted a coup d'etat and led a criminal organization to overturn the result of the October 2022 election, in which he was narrowly defeated by current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The country's Supreme Court is hearing testimony from high-ranking military and political figures from Monday over the next 2 weeks. The 70-year-old far-right leader, a former army captain who governed Brazil from 2019 to 2022, could face up to 40 years in prison if convicted. Bolsonaro denies the allegations, claiming he is a victim of a victim of political persecution. More than 80 witnesses are set to testify via video conference, including Generals Marco Antonio Freire Gomes and Carlos de Almeida Baptista Jr., who served as commanders of the Army and Air Force under Bolsonaro. Finger man, finger man, finger man. Sorry about the fuck up on Saturday. The sky gods took a piss on us. So we're gonna finish the show next week. In previous statements to federal police, both men said Bolsonaro had raised the hypothetical possibility of using legal means to annul the 2022 election and justify military intervention. According to prosecutors, the alleged plot included plans to declare a state of emergency, hold new elections, and assassinate President Lula. A 900-page federal police report details the scheme, which prosecutors say ultimately collapsed due to a lack of support within the military. The charges also encompass the January 8, 2023 riots in Brasilia, when thousands of Bolsonaro supporters stormed Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace 1 week after Lula's inauguration. Though Bolsonaro, a close ally of the U.S. President shitface McGee fuckhead cocksucker Trump, when they were both in power, was in the U.S. at the time, prosecutors argue he backed the violence, calling it the last hope of those seeking to overturn the election. 7 of Bolsonaro's former aides are being tried alongside him, including 4 former ministers, a former Navy commander, and the head of Brazil's intelligence services during his presidency. This marks the first time a Brazilian president has faced coup charges since the end of the military dictatorship in 1985. Bolsonaro, who has often expressed admiration for that era, is already banned from holding public office until 2030 after making claims about Brazil's electronic voting system. Despite the ban, Bolsonaro has indicated a desire to return to politics, but speaking to UOL last week, I don't know who that is, he likened the charges to a telenovela scenario and warned that a conviction would be a death penalty, political and physical. Bolsonaro was heavily criticized when he was Brazil's leader during the COVID-19 pandemic and when his policies and spread of misinformation contributed to the nation having the highest overall death toll in Latin America and the second highest in the world after the U.S. from the coronavirus. Earlier this month, he was recently discharged from hospital after undergoing major abdominal surgery, the latest in a series of procedures stemming from a stabbing attack in 2018. Okay, we got a few more stories left in our news block for you because you're all sweeties and I love you all that much. So the Supreme Court has allowed Trump to revoke protected status for thousands of Venezuelans. So the Supreme Court gave, what is this? Nobody asked for you. The Supreme Court gave the Trump administration the green light yesterday to revoke special legal protections for thousands of Venezuelan immigrants, which could pave the way for at least some of them to be deported. The High Court granted an emergency application filed by the administration, meaning officials can move forward with reversing a decision made at the tail end of the Biden administration to extend protections for almost 350,000 Venezuelans under the federal temporary protected status program. The brief order noted that liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson would have denied the application. Litigation will now continue in lower courts. This is the largest single action stripping any group of non-citizens of immigration status in modern U.S. history. Ahalan Arulanathanam, I'm not getting that. One of the lawyers representing Venezuelan plaintiffs said in a statement. It was truly shocking that the Supreme Court authorized the move without giving the case more consideration, he added. The decision is a win for the American people and the safety of our communities, Assistant Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement. A win for the American people. Yeah, because we were in such danger of all those Venezuelans. Motherfucker. The Trump administration is instituting integrity into our immigration system to keep our homeland and its peoples safe, she added. Whatever. As a result of political instability in Venezuela, the Biden administration in March 2021 said Venezuelans were eligible for temporary protected status under the federal program that has existed since 1990 to provide humanitarian relief to people from countries reeling from war, reeling from United States foreign policy, natural disasters, or other catastrophes such as U.S. foreign policy. People accepted into the program have legal status in the United States and can get work authorization for up to 18 months, subject to extensions. Without that protection, affected people are subject to deportation via the normal legal process, but can seek other avenues for remaining in the U.S. by, for example, claiming asylum. At issue before the Supreme Court was a designation made in October 2023 and extended in January just before Trump took office. It's set to expire October next year. In February, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem sought to unwind these determinations, meaning the protections would expire this year instead. The Supreme Court order indicated that some of the affected immigrants whose work authorization was previously extended to October next year may have legal grounds to mount another legal challenge, although advocates were not immediately sure what the language meant. California-based U.S. District Judge Edward Chen blocked the move, citing concerns that the decision was based in part on racial animus. Noem's action meant the affected immigrants face possible imminent deportation, he wrote. Solicitor General D. John Sauer wrote in the administration's emergency application that the courts could not review Noem's decision. The court's order contravenes fundamental executive branch prerogatives and indefinitely delays sensitive policy decisions in an area of immigration policy that Congress recognized must be flexible, fast-paced, and discretionary, he said. The National TPS Alliance and individual Venezuelans challenged the move in court. Their lawyers wrote that the Trump administration was essentially seeking to evade judicial review on the scope of its own powers. It should be unremarkable that federal courts say what the law is, they added. They noted that if Noem's plan went into effect, it would lead to lost employment and widespread deportations to an unsafe country. The Supreme Court decision comes 3 days after the court handed a defeat to the Trump administration on another aspect of its hardline immigration agenda in a separate case involving Venezuelan detainees. In that case, the court ruled that the Trump administration must give immigrants a genuine chance to bring objection if the government seeks to deport them using a wartime law called the Alien Enemies Act. I think the Alien Enemies Act is talking about you, Chuck. You better watch out, man. He's probably AI the whole time. He probably was. What happened? Meanwhile, we finish up in Africa with a couple of stories as Nigeria, 20,000 flee Malta after militant attacks. I mean, we focus on what's going on in the Middle East as we should because of the horrible atrocities that are going on there. But Africa has so many atrocities too. Hopefully one day there'll be a unified Africa, but probably not anytime soon. At least 20,000 people have fled the town of Malta in northeastern Nigeria following a surge in attacks by Islamist Islamist militants, according to Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum. Marta, near the border with Cameroon, had been resettled 4 years ago after years under insurgent control, but was recently overrun again by suspected Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters. Zulum visited Marta after militants briefly seized a local army base last week, killing at least 5 soldiers. He also toured nearby Ran, where another base was attacked, and plans to visit Kalawa Bulge, where 23 farmers were reportedly killed. The region has seen a rise in militant activity in 2025, raising fears that extremist groups are regaining ground. Over the past 16 years, the insurgency has displaced more than 2 million people and killed thousands. Zulum warned that relocating displaced residents to camps like the one in Dikwa could expose young people to recruitments by militias. Residents of Marta fear more violence could force them from their homes once again. And finally, in our news block here, Sudan's army chief names former UN official as new premier. Sudan's army chief and de facto leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan appointed former UN official Camille Idris as the country's new prime minister more than 2 years into a brutal war. Idris, a career diplomat and past presidential candidate, was the Director General of the United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization, and has also served in Sudan's permanent mission to the UN. The chairman of the Sovereignty Council issued a constitutional decree appointing Camille El Tayeb Idris Abdel Hafiz as prime minister. A statement from Sudan's ruling Transitional Sovereignty Council read, in 2010, Idris ran in the presidential elections against longtime Islamist military ruler Omar al-Bashir. Since April 2023, the war in Sudan has pitted Burham's army forces against the paramilitary RSF, commanded by his former deputy, Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. The conflict has killed tens of thousands of people, displaced 13 million, and created what the United Nations describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Idris replaces veteran diplomat Dafala al-Hajj Ali, who was appointed by Burham at the end of April and served less than 3 weeks as acting prime minister. Burhan had earlier said that he would form a technocratic wartime government to help complete what remains of our military objectives, which is liberating Sudan from these rebels. In April, the RSF, hey, what's up, CBC voter? Good to see you. April, the RSF announced it would form a rival government a few weeks after signing a charter in Kenya with a coalition of military and political allies. The move has raised international fears that Sudan would be permanently divided between the two sides, both of which have been accused of war atrocities. The conflict has already carved up Sudan, with the army holding the north, east, and center, while the RSF dominates nearly all of Darfur, and with its allies, parts of the south. So, yep, things are cooking over with elections and people changing, becoming premier. But is it enough to change what's going on in the world? Probably not. I would say no. But, you know, we'll see what happens, as they say. Water is wet, the sky is blue, and 5 more journalists have been killed by Israel. Propaganda Watch coming at you.
Sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So, 5 more Palestinian journalists killed in Israeli strikes in Gaza. 5 more Palestinian journalists were killed in Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza Strip on Sunday, a medical source said. The source said a woman reporter was among the victims who lost their lives along with members of their families in attacks on houses and tents for displaced civilians in various areas across Gaza. He identified the slain reporters as Abdul Rahman al-Abayadallah, Khaled Abu Saif, Aziz al-Hajar, Ahmed al-Zaitani, and Noor Kandil. The new fatalities brought the number of journalists killed in Israeli attacks in Gaza since October 2023 to 222, according to Gaza's government media office. The health ministry said early Sunday that at least 153 Palestinians were killed in intensified Israeli airstrikes, as we told you earlier in the show. And then you know the rest of the information there. Meanwhile, there's a measure targeting pro-Palestine NGOs is going to disappear from the U.S. tax bill. So this is some good news. A measure known as the nonprofit killer has been removed from an enormous tax bill being advanced by the U.S. Congress, according to the bill posted online by the House of Representatives. The provision, which no longer appeared on President Trump's backed One Big Beautiful Bill on Monday, would have given executive branch authority to strip the tax-exempt status of nonprofits that it deemed supportive of terrorism. Advocates have warned that the legislative effort, which failed to pass as a standalone bill last year, could be abused to crack down on groups that the administration does not agree with, particularly NGOs that support Palestinian rights. Israel has given little indication that it's relenting after more than 19 months into its war on Gaza. The past week has seen an intensification of violence across the besieged Palestinian territory, which has killed hundreds of people. The reason for the disappearance of the NGO provisions remains unclear, and experts warned it may yet reappear in the bill before the final vote in the House, expected later in the week. The office of Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson did not immediately respond to Al Jazeera's request for comment about it because he's a little pussy bitch. With a razor-thin majority in the House, Republicans need every vote to pass the tax bill, which Trump has put at the top of his agenda in Congress. Kia Hamadanchi, a senior policy counsel with the ACLU, said the section may have been removed to avoid additional controversy for the must-pass bill, especially because the Senate parliamentarian, a nonpartisan office that oversees procedures, may have rejected it for violating the rules. Well, then Trump will just fire him, just like other Republicans do. Democrats were like, oh, that parliamentarian, that's a bad bitch. I don't want to mess with her. Or him, whoever it is. It's possible that this is a hiccup that they didn't want, given that it wasn't even likely to go through. Hamadanchi told Al Jazeera, I can't tell you that is the reason for sure. What I can tell you is that we continue to be very vigilant in case it comes back, either later this week or in the future. So I think we talked about that last week. The nonprofit killer that I'm going to put in there. Yeah, we sure did. Here in Illinois, of all places, this crazy town and state, Illinois state lawmakers attempt long shot repeal of BDS ban. So this might be a thing. Progressive members of the Democratic supermajority in the Illinois General Assembly are pushing forward a bill to reverse the decade-old state ban on boycotts of Israel, Capital News Illinois reported on Sunday. Since 2015, Illinois has forbidden the investment of state pension funds in companies that engage in any form of BDS against Israel. The official BDS movement was launched 20 years ago as a means of nonviolent action in the face of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, modeled on the approach that ended apartheid in South Africa. Yeah, I remember that too. They were boycotting all kinds of South African products then too. In the U.S., 38 states now have some measure of an anti-BDS law that prevents a company or an individual from receiving government contracts if they demonstrate an anti-Israel stance. 10 years ago, Illinois was at the forefront of the campaign. The land of Lincoln. The state set up the Illinois Investment Policy Board for the sole purpose of looking into whether certain companies act against Israeli interests, Capital News pointed out. The current list of 30 banned companies includes Air Canada, which apologized earlier this year after passengers reported that some of its in-flight maps did not label the state of Israel and instead opted for Palestinian territories. Unilever, the parent... This says Unilever. I think it's Unilever. The parent company of Ben & Jerry's ice cream is also on the list after it decided in 2021 not to sell its products in the territories Israel occupied after 1967, namely the occupied West Bank in this case, because it is, according to the United Nations, an internationally recognized illegal occupation the company maintained. Now, Illinois Democrat and the first Palestinian American elected to the state legislature, Abdel Nasser Rashid, has introduced House Bill 2723 to repeal the anti-boycott law. This is about the right for people to advocate for what they believe, in this particular case for human rights advocacy, without the state telling you what you have to believe and how you have to act, Rashid said, according to Capital News. It's a matter of making sure that Illinois is on the right side of history, not participating in the oppression of the Palestinian people, but it is also about making sure that Illinoisans and companies that do business in Illinois are not being forced and bullied and retaliated against because they chose to stand for human rights. While 1/5 of the Democratic caucus, including the leaders of the Latino, Black, and Progressive caucuses, initially supported the bill, Capital News said it has been stalled. With a Democratic supermajority in place, progressives likely want to take advantage of the tide, especially with multiple polls showing support for Israel among the American public is dropping. At the same time, there may be pressure from the top to shelve the bill given the pro-Israel billionaire and Democratic governor, that's right, the head Zionist of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, is an expected presidential nominee for the 2028 election, will not want perceived anti-Israel movement within his state to hold back his campaign, Capital News reported. Fuck J.B. Pritzker. The news report cited J Street, a pro-Israel advocacy group, as not taking a position on boycott laws either, as long as boycotts are initiatives which are limited to opposing the occupation along the 1967 lines versus calls to abolish the entire state of Israel. At the Senate level in the Illinois legislature, some lawmakers have pulled their co-sponsorship of that chamber's anti-Israel boycott bill in recent weeks. Dick Simpson, a professor emeritus at the University of Illinois at Chicago, told Capital News why should they vote on something that isn't going to pass and then cause some constituents to be mad about it. I'd be amazed if they actually let them vote on it in the first place. But we'll see. At least somebody's trying here in Illinois. ICC prosecutor Kareem Khan is on leave amid misconduct probe and Trump sanctions. Me thinks some bullshit is cooking with this too. The chief prosecutor for the ICC, Kareem Khan, has been granted a leave of absence pending investigations into alleged misconduct, according to a statement by the court's management body. Khan is the only ICC official to be named in the sanctions imposed by Washington in February. He's also been facing a sexual harassment probe by an external UN body since late last year. On Sunday, the Assembly of States Parties, ASP, that's a snake. The governing body of the court said Khan informed the ICC on Friday that he would step aside until the conclusion of the UN Office of Internal Oversight Services, or OIOS, process the external investigation into allegations of mischief. The prosecutor's office confirmed Monday that Deputy Prosecutors Nazat Shamim Khan and Mame Mandie Nyang have assumed leadership during Khan's leave. They probably put him on leave because his name was too easy to pronounce and spell. In assuming leadership, the deputy prosecutors underlined the importance of ensuring continuity of the office's activities across all areas of work and particularly in the mission to investigate and prosecute the most serious crimes with independence and impartiality. An ICC statement read, the office reaffirms its commitment to the continued effective implementation of its mandate to deliver justice for victims of the Rome Statute crimes across all situations and cases globally. How much is left in this? All right. The ICC is the only permanent international court tasked with the prosecution of individuals for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Khan's application for arrest warrants for Israeli leaders last year over war crimes charges has prompted the U.S. to sanction him and those who cooperate with the court shortly after Trump became president again in January. Trump's order placed financial and visa sanctions on Khan as well as other non-U.S. individuals and their family members who assist in ICC investigations of U.S. citizens or allies. Don't you dare investigate our U.S. citizens. That's our job. The order came after a visit to the White House by ass-face fuck-off, who is wanted by the ICC over alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Gaza since October 2023, particularly the crime of starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, which is still going on. Even though he let 9 trucks in. What a stand-up guy this guy is. The AP reported last week that as a result of the sanctions, Khan lost access to his email. I think his Microsoft email got taken away too by Bill Gates. Same reason. Let's see. He hosted by the U.S. So there it is. His email hosted by Microsoft, and then he started using the Swiss email provider Proton Mail instead. Good for you. It also suggested that the court's work had been brought to a halt, including its investigation into atrocities in Sudan and Israel too. 6 senior officials have also quit their jobs over fears of sanctions, AP reported. So, and then that's just a little more backstory, and we've already told you that about him. So, yeah, he's, they are really doubling down on this guy. I don't know if he's a brave man or not, but, you know, when you got all those Zionists coming after you like that, you know, there's always a hot seat. Meanwhile, in football news, it's world football, like, soccer. You've heard of that. Arsenal sued for sacking employee over anti-Zionist views as UK free speech crackdown deepens. Arsenal Football Club, or FC, is facing a legal challenge after firing a long-serving staff member for expressing anti-Zionist views online, an incident that has further exposed the widening assault on pro-Palestinian speech in the UK. Mark Bonnick, a lifelong Arsenal supporter who worked at the club's youth academy for 22 years, was sacked. It means he was fired, if you didn't know that, on Christmas Eve 2023 after posting on social media about Israel's war on Gaza, including calling Israel an apartheid state and criticizing Zionist ideology. I think it's crazy that in football we can talk about kicking out racism, but we're not allowed to talk about apartheid and what's going on in Israel, Bonnick told Novara Media. We spoke out against the apartheid in South Africa. Why can we not speak out against genocide now? Because the South Africans aren't running the world like the Zionists are, my friend. Arsenal admitted Bonnick's posts were not anti-Semitic, but said they could be perceived as inflammatory or offensive, and claimed he had brought the club into disrepute. In a disciplinary letter, the club cited the reputational damage caused by media coverage and said engaging in online debate on such a controversial topic and making comments found to be highly offensive and inflammatory displayed a complete lack of judgment. The posts, which were made on the tweeters, included criticisms of Jewish supremacy and a claim that Zionist Israel had a persecution complex. Bonnick is now suing Arsenal for unfair dismissal and discrimination with legal support from the European Legal Support Center. His case is based on the UK Equality Act, citing his anti-Zionist beliefs as a protected philosophical belief in line with legal precedent set by the David Miller Employment Tribunal. You remember that thing. In a statement issued through the ELSC, Bonnick said, "All I did was express grief, anger, and sorrow over the atrocities unfolding in Gaza. For that, Arsenal fired me. That sends a chilling and dangerous message. What hurts most is that Arsenal, a club I've loved, served, and supported, chose silence in the face of horror. Why won't they speak out now? Why is solidarity only acceptable when it's safe or convenient? Because it is safe and convenient. That's why it's accepted." In his legal team, led by barrister Frank Maginnis, argues that Arsenal prioritized public relations over workers' rights and enforced political censorship. His dismissal sends a chilling message to those who speak out against apartheid and genocide. Arsenal must be held accountable, Maginnis said. Tasnime Akunji, also of the ELSC, added, "Arsenal didn't sack Mark for misconduct or anti-Semitism. They sacked him for standing with Palestine. This is political censorship, part of a wider effort to silence those speaking out against genocide." The club's double standard has been widely criticized. In October 2023, Arsenal player Oleksandr Zinchenko posted an "I Stand With Israel" graphic to his social media account during Israel's onslaught of Gaza's besieged population. Despite the political nature of that message, Arsenal took no disciplinary action. The post was later deleted. The case forms part of a broader pattern across UK institutions. From universities to football clubs, employees and students expressing solidarity with Palestine have faced a growing crackdown. In 2021, Arsenal faced pressure from sponsor Lavazza over midfielder Mohamed El-Neni's pro-Palestinian tweet. The club said then that players were entitled to their views, but had spoken to El-Neni to help him understand the wider implications of his post. In March this year, Dagenham and Redbridge sacked Dr. Salma Mashour 3 days into her role over a social media post about Gaza before issuing a public apology. Across Europe, legal challenges to such dismissals are gaining traction. German club Mainz was recently ordered to pay 1.5 million euros, that's 1.6 million American smackaroonies, to Anwar El Ghazi, whom they sacked over pro-Palestine posts. El Ghazi donated 500,000 pounds of the settlement to children in Gaza. It's very sweet of him to do that. Oh, yeah, okay. So next, we told you that Biden has cancer off the top of the show there. But how long has he had cancer? Well, apparently, hey, what's up, P-Stub? Good to see you. So apparently Joe Biden's had this probably throughout his entire presidency. And to help point the way for us is our unofficial contributor to the show, James Lee. If you're not following him, his channel is 5149 with James Lee. He always has some good information, mostly about like Cali stuff, but he's talking about how long Joe Biden has had this cancer.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but Joe Biden didn't just get cancer yesterday. He's had it for years. They've just been lying about it until right now.
This is not speculation. If you have prostate cancer that is spread to the bone, then he's most certainly, you were saying, had it when he was president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. He did not develop it in the last 100, 200 days. He had it while he was president. He probably had it at the start of his presidency in 2021.
Since 2021. And these are the same people who just a year ago said Biden is the most fit they've ever seen him.
I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent.
Cogent.
In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically.
These guys are all freaking liars. They only tell you the truth when it doesn't matter anymore, like right now. The funny thing about this whole thing is that Biden himself said that he had cancer 3 years ago.
You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer.
The White House at the time called it a gaffe and said he was referring to some other time that he had cancer. Yeah, sure. Truth is, Joe Biden was really never president, just a prop.
Pretty much. I think we've been saying that too. That he's just an empty husk. That somebody's controlling the puppet, right? What's up, Yipper? Good to see you. Yeah, I know this is beyond elder. Yeah, they're using a guy with late stage cancer. How fucked up is that? But but you kept hearing, oh, he's in great shape. His mental facilities or mental faculties are just top notch. He's better. Well, what that asshole say, he's better than he's ever been. They'll only tell you the truth when it doesn't matter anymore. Exactly. That's right. Why waste breath on an empty husk? I know, right? But that's just another example of the propaganda here in the United States, right? This is the same shit they did during the Cold War in the Soviet Union. Somebody would get sick, you wouldn't know, and then they all of a sudden they were dead. You're like, wait, what happened? I thought he was just like busy, and now he's dead. That's what seems like is going on there. And this ain't just a Democratic thing. They would do this for Trump too. I'm pretty sure Trump is not in the best health where he's at right now too. So finally, I wanted to throw this in here because I know this Golden Dome missile shield thing has been talked about, and I think this is such a fucking scam. So Trump's Golden Dome missile shield expected to cost $500 billion. Trump's plan to develop a new massive missile defense system for the U.S. dubbed the Golden Dome, or the Iron Dome for America, is expected to cost $500 billion over the next 20 years. That's according to CNN, citing an estimate from the CBO. The project will be a boondoggle for U.S. weapons makers, you think? And according to a report from Reuters, Elon Musk's SpaceX has emerged as a frontrunner to develop key parts of the missile shield. Of course. The report said SpaceX has partnered with Palantir and Anduril on the project. Why not get Satan himself up there too? The CNN report said that representatives from SpaceX, Palantir, and Anduril have all pitched Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on their plans for the project, and a source told the media outlet that he wants what they're selling. Look at them. Ah, come on. Pentagon officials have submitted plans to Trump for several options for developing the missile shield, and the president is expected to announce his preferred plan soon. Secretary of Defense and other department leaders have engaged with the president to present options and look forward to announcing the path forward in the coming days, said Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell. The idea of the Golden Dome is to provide a missile shield for the entire territory of the United States that can intercept the most advanced missiles in the world. Trump's executive order that directed the Pentagon to pursue the plan specified that it must include space-based interceptors. The White House's $1 trillion military budget request for 2026 includes $25 billion for the Golden Dome. Besides the massive cost, the project will likely kick off a new global arms race. You think? All this pissing contest and spending money where we could be using it to actually help people. If Trump gets a colostomy, who will know? Exactly. I mean, Trump ain't no spring chicken, and his diet ain't exactly, Jack LaLanne. So, who knows what they're hiding about Trumpy, right? So that's your propaganda watch for this Tuesday, May 20th, sponsored by I don't give a fuck. So later today, I think Willie's got a show coming up tonight, right, Willie? I don't know. Willie's probably asleep now. He's probably taking his nap. I believe Willie's going to be on tonight. Around the World with D and Friends is on tonight, too. And, of course, our buddy Kevin over at Black Bear News. He should be on around 3 p.m. Eastern, 321, what is that, noon Pacific time for Black Bear News. So check him out. And if you could either donate or share the link for his GoFundMe that's down below. He lost his house during the LA fires, if you didn't know, and he could use all the help he can get from all his pals in the space and beyond, too. Somebody out there wants to chip in, that would be great. I'm sure he would appreciate it. So that's all coming up today from some of your pals over here in the old space there with our pals. You was totally in love and crushed on Jack LaLanne. He was a handsome cat. Very charismatic, too. I'm sure he was very good with the ladies. Finally, today, we got a little twofer here on the old kicker. And it's mostly like weather and atmosphere related. So on Friday, it was a bit of a bizarre situation as I was here at the casa, and all of a sudden on my phone, I got this dust storm warning on my phone. And I was like, what, the dust storm? Are we back in the 30s? Is that what's happening? We had a pandemic in the early part of the 20th century, and wars and fighting and shitty economy. Is all that stuff coming around once again? This is some wild shit. Dust storm Friday was city's worst since 1930s, Weather Service says. So, us Chicagoans on Friday opened their phones to a truly bizarre weather alert, a dust storm warning. This is from Block Club Chicago. A little before 7 p.m. Friday, a wall of dust slammed into the city, propelled by 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts coming from the southwest. National Weather Service meteorologist Zachary Yak, don't talk back, said a large storm system, his name's Zachary Yak. Zachary Yak, don't talk back. A large storm system that produced tornadoes across 4 states, including Illinois, swept through Bloomington and central Illinois a few hours earlier Friday and picked up dust from surrounding farmland experiencing unusually dry soil conditions, Yak said. The sky in Chicago darkened with a beige haze as the dust cloud blanketed the area. We've got some video here. Motorists were asked to pull over their cars, while those with respiratory and other health issues were cautioned to stay indoors, according to the alert. It was the worst dust storm and one of only a handful of such weather events in the city in nearly a century. Prior to Friday's storm, Chicago hadn't seen a dust storm of this size since May 10th, 1934, Yak said. That was during the Dust Bowl era, a series of environmental catastrophes, the Great Plains agricultural lands. The last time such a storm passed through the area was on May 31st, 1985, leading to a pileup on I-90 that left a man dead. But its impacts weren't as great in the city proper, whereas Friday's storm blanketed the entire area, including downtown. So check this out. This is wild. What a beautiful day in Chicago as we look at the situation here. Oh, wait. Oh, where did the sun go? Oh, my. So look over here. Look at this. That is crazy. And then all of a sudden, boom. Look at that. That happened in Chi-Town, y'all. Chirac. You can thank Agriculture Secretary Earl Butz for the dust storms we have today. Go big or get out. That effing asshole was a frontal lobotomy. I thought he was going to say go big or go Butz. But yeah, man, that's the storm that came through there. Dust storms aren't as dangerous as weather events like tornadoes, which killed 27 in Kentucky and Missouri Friday. But what makes a storm like Friday's potentially dangerous was the very low visibility, Yak said. In fact, if you looked at a lot of the observations from Friday evening, you saw a lot of places reporting quarter-mile or less visibility, he explained. When you have that happening over an interstate, it causes very hazardous travel conditions for people. So the biggest threat is related to motorists who get stuck in a dust storm and can't see where they're going. You know, kind of similar to the fire. I think it was a lot of smoke going on. The flight of the Phoenix was 1965. Is that what you said, Bella? Yeah, if you look at a lot of the observations, yeah, okay. So dust storms account for 14 to 32 deaths per year in the U.S., according to NOAA. The vast majority of those deaths are traffic related. There's more dust coming in. Chicagoans shouldn't expect storms like that to be a common occurrence in the future. A perfect cocktail of unique weather conditions enabled Friday's dust storms to be possible, Yak said. Global rising temperatures and subsequent desertification, however, could increase in the frequency of dust storms, according to the World Health Organization, or if Butts keeps fucking around with shit. Dust storms can occur anywhere in the world, but are more common in arid climate zones like deserts or plains. In the U.S., dust storms frequently occur in southwestern states like Arizona, California, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah, according to the National Weather Service. The storm reminded me a lot of being in Arizona where my grandparents live. Uptown resident Ian McDunn said dust storms like that are pretty common there. I've never seen something like that happen in Chicago. Just how dark it got. Yeah, it got pretty dark. The storm passed over the city in less than an hour, but that was enough time for residents to lose their minds over social media. And then there's all kinds of stuff on there. And then there was this one. And then from space, you can see it. Crazy. So there's a normal view. And then this is when the dust hits. It's crazy. So yeah, dust storm in Chicago. But then Saturday, this shit happened. Mysterious white streak spotted over the U.S. skies during surprise aurora storm. What was it? So I told you, maybe if you were here earlier, I told you that our secret show on Saturday night got knocked out. The internet got knocked out. And probably because one of the reasons there was a freaking solar storm going on. So what was it? Look at that. That looks like this was during the storm. I'll tell you about it in a second here. The night sky offered lucky sky watchers an unexpected double feature on May 17th, a surprise geomagnetic storm and a mysterious white plume slicing through the auroras. This is some crazy shit. The moderate G2 class geomagnetic storm came as quite a surprise, kicking off early Friday after Earth caught the glancing blow of a coronal mass ejection. The CME was launched during a colossal filament eruption on May 12th from the sun's northern hemisphere. If you don't know what a coronal mass ejection is, it's just like a big blob of plasma just shoots off the sun, right? The launched during a colossal on May 12th from the sun's northern hemisphere. Initially expected to miss Earth, the bird wing ejecta was wider than predicted, with some of the material striking Earth 4 days after it left the sun. So they thought it was going to miss, but then it hit. It grazed us. The thing was like 600,000 miles wide or some shit. But the real head turner came when a streak of bright white light lit up the sky over Colorado and other parts of the U.S. I think they saw it in Canada too, in Alberta. At first glance, you could be mistaken for thinking it was a strange version of Steve, a rare atmospheric phenomenon that can accompany the northern lights, but skywatchers quickly realized it was something entirely different. The aurora was rippling low on the northern horizon when suddenly a bright streak of light, reminiscent of a rocket reentry, appeared high in the sky and flowed down to the horizon. This is photographer Mike Lewinsky told spaceweather.com. Yeah, they were seeing auroras as far south as Nebraska. Look at this thing. Psh. That's got to be the streak, right? That's got to be the plasma that shot by. Steve, Steve. The culprit, a recent rocket launch, roughly an hour earlier. Chinese company Landscape had launched its Zhuke 2E methane-fueled rocket from Site 96 at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in China. It carried 6 satellites into orbit, including a radar spacecraft and space science payload. The streak was likely from a deorbit or circularization burn, possibly related to satellite deployment, according to spaceweather.com. Astronomer Jonathan McDowell took to tweeters to confirm that the white streak of light was a result of the upper stage passing over the U.S. Four Corners area. McDowell further explained that the white streak was caused by the fuel dump from the upper stage at about 155 miles altitude. But okay, if that's at 150, that is a huge fucking streak for 155 miles away. That don't look like somebody's lying. We probably should have put that in the propaganda watch. But anyway, fuckery afoot in the skies around the United States over the weekend. The dust storm on Friday, this shit on Saturday. I'm telling you, man, you got in, and then when these things hit, this is what happens in a nutshell. If it's powerful enough, it'll fuck up the magnetic field around the earth. And if it fucks up the magnetic field enough, then all that shit's going to come in and fry all your shit. And then the radiation comes in and then, yeah, anyway. So be safe out there, folks. Take care of yourselves. Don't, it's a Chinese spy balloon. Yeah, so, and I don't know if you are familiar with Randall Carlson. He's talking about something happened during the Younger Dryas that basically melted the ice sheets just like that. Some people think it was the tail end of a comet that did it, but I think Robert Schoch, he's from University of Boston, he seems to think that this was like a giant plasma dump just hit the earth way back, 15,000 years ago and melted the ice caps, and that's where you get all the flood myths. So very interesting stuff. You can afford to get hit with Steve's plasma. You can. Not your plasma, Steve G. But it might be. Anyway, y'all quit fucking with the sky, man. We got to use that thing. All right, so that's it for today. I guess that's enough funsies. We got, like we said, Willie and D tonight, and Kevin's coming up probably in about an hour and a half, something like that. So a lot of good stuff for you. Be sure to check out our pals here. If you like what if you're new, if you want to like, share, and subscribe, that helps us out a whole bunch. Tell your friends about it. You want to donate to the show, we've got donation links down below. You can be a Patreon member. Put your name up at the beginning of the show to say thank you for all the hard love and hard stuff that you do. That sounded dirty. Sorry. For all the good work that you do and supporting the show, we appreciate it. If not, if you can share out the links, I appreciate it too. So that's it for me. Like I said, I might pop on, do just like a solo show. I was thinking about maybe talking about a specific subject. I don't know. We'll see. But in any event, this show will be back on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Mountain, and 8 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, and the Book of Faces. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you. Love each and every one of you. And I hope keep looking up. and pray for rocks to fall out of the sky. It's probably the only way we'll get any real change anytime soon. I know that sounds bad, but that's just me. Peace.
This is City Alpha 5. Woo!